one thing that I've been really impressed with in following you, Layne, is the what's the right word I want to use? The deliberate nature with which you approach things. So I've seen pictures of you where I think, like, he doesn't even look like a human being. He's so ripped and shredded. And I've seen pictures of you where you look kind of chubby. And you've been very clear and said, I'm going through different phases. I'm very deliberate about what I do. This is a phase where I am adding a ton of lean mass, and with it comes some body fat. And right now I'm taking it off. But one, you're very deliberate, so nothing's haphazard. And two, you really emphasize the importance of consistency. So how do I stay consistent? Because it doesn't take nearly as much work to preserve muscle mass once you have it, but and I talked about this with Alex Hutchinson on a previous podcast. One of the things I fear the most for my patients as they age is any sort of injury or illness that takes them out of exercise. Because the deconditioning that occurs when someone doesn't do anything for a month is devastating. So can you put some numbers to that? Because I believe you've spoken about this, which is, what is the effort required to maintain, and I'm not talking about like 4% body fat on a stage. I'm talking about, and again, we'll use your numbers as an example. You happen to be, great to begin with, but, for you to stay at 13, 14% body fat, is not the end of the world. It's not a huge sacrifice, but it requires being diligent still. What does that mean to you, and how do you advise your clients around that?
So there's a few layers to this. When it comes to resistance training, this is really just anything in life. Resistance training taught me so much about just life overall, right? So the same people who come up with biohacks of how you can get to your goal in 12 weeks or whatever, in the financial world, they're the same people who are like, hey, join my pyramid scheme and earn 6 figures from home doing 1 hour of work a week. Most reasonable people know that that's not how you acquire wealth, right? You acquire wealth through, if you're, Thomas J. Stanley's, I use fiscal examples because I just find it's easier for people. But 80% of millionaires are first generation self-made. And most of them got there not through getting lucky, but the fact that they saved more money than they earned, they were consistent, and they did that for a long period of time. Now, that is the granular, mechanistic way of doing it, kind of like how we talk about calories in, calories out, right? But what it takes to get that consistency is modification to behavior, right? Because for the same reason that somebody binges on whatever, donuts, chocolate, cakes, cookies, whatever, is the same reason that somebody who also knows, hey, in order for me to save money, I need to earn more than I spend, still goes out and blows $1,500 on a shopping spree after a stressful week, right? Because they have a habit and an association with something. And so I think people need to understand that consistency is the most important thing. But to create that consistency, you have to change your habits. You have to create habits. I read a review, systematic review by a gal named Marie Spreckley, and I'm going to give myself a pat in the back here for a second, because she actually said that she went back to school after reading my book, Fat Loss Forever, and it's what inspired her to do her Ph.D. work, which is pretty awesome. And she did a systematic review of looking at people who lost weight and kept it off. So some of the commonalities of that. And a lot of it was what you expected. Consistency, ability to embrace challenges rather than running from them, or viewing challenges as part of the process. I think a lot of people, when setbacks occur or challenges occur, they feel that that's abnormal, as opposed to embracing it as part of this process. But then something that was in the paper that I hadn't thought about before, that I think is so critical to developing that consistency and making a change: forming a new identity. So the people who lost weight and kept it off said that they had to form a new identity. And I really chewed on this for a while. And do you know Ethan Suplee?
No, but I was just about to say James Clear is the first person who made that point clear to me, no pun intended. And it of all the things in James's book, that one actually appealed to me the most, which was, it's not about well, I always knew it wasn't about discipline and willpower, because those things are going to fade over time. But this piece around, and let's use exercise as the example, it's going from, oh, I have to do this thing, I have to do this thing, to I'm a person who exercises, I'm a fit person. That's the transition that makes it easier to do day in and day out. And that's probably why I've never struggled with exercise. I struggle with the opposite. I really struggle to take a day off. I think, to be completely transparent, I'm always going to struggle with food a little bit. I haven't had the full identity switch in food, but I think I was born with, or at least it was etched in my brain when I was so young due to my insecurities around exercise.
So I think you said something very poignant there, and that's, you just put in your mind, this is what I do. This is what I do. This is part of who I am. And so Ethan Suplee, he's an actor, and he was in, you probably, if you've seen the movie Remember the Titans.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I know who you're talking about now. He lost a staggering amount of weight, like almost an unrecognizable amount of weight.
He's jacked now,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I talk to him pretty frequently. And he has a thing he puts on his Instagram. He say, I killed my clone today. And I asked him about that because I read Marie's paper, and then I made this connection because I always wondered what he meant by I killed my clone today. And I said, is this what you mean? That you formed a new identity, that you killed the old person that you were? And he said, that is exactly what I mean. Because you cannot create a new life, a new identity, or you cannot create a new life, and you cannot have a physical and overall change in your life while still dragging those behaviors behind you, right? Let's take a basic example, an alcoholic, right? If an alcoholic decides tomorrow, I don't want to be this anymore, you have to change everything. You can't just, okay, I want to stop drinking. No, your entire identity has been around, I go to a bar, I hang out with my friends after work, they probably drink, my family probably drank growing up, that's where I learned it from. Now you've got to change everything. You are not going to be able to be, this new person while still dragging your old behaviors behind you. And I think a lot of people try to do that when it comes to nutrition and maybe even exercise. I want things to change, but I don't want to give up my, 3 glasses of wine a night, or I don't want to give up this, or I don't want to give up that. What I always tell people is like, listen, the great thing about nutrition is you get to pick what you sacrifice, okay? So for me, what made it easy for me, and I always tell people, you should pick the form of restriction that feels easiest to you. I don't care what anybody else feels like. For me, if I'm able to eat whatever foods I want, as long as I control portion size and track my calories and macros and whatnot, that feels easy. That is not difficult for me to maintain like a lean physique and athletic. But for other people, that may be extremely tedious, difficult. It may feel labor intensive. To me, it doesn't. What feels labor intensive to me is saying, okay, Layne, you can't have, processed food ever again, or you can't have carbs, or you can't have fats, or whatever. But for other people, some people, I hear it all the time, say, I did X diet, ketogenic diet, and it felt easy. I did intermittent fasting. I was never hungry. It felt easy. Cool. Great. Just don't assume that what was easy for you is going to be easy for everybody else, because this, I thought flexible dieting was going to be the solution for everybody because it was easy for me. So I arrogantly assumed that it'd be that way for everybody else. And I think everybody goes through that sort of like, you seek out your own echo chamber sort of thing, right? And you find these people who had the same experience as you, and you just assume everybody's like that. It turns out, no, people are quite different. So find you get to pick the type of restriction. Find what feels easiest. And try not to get too caught up in, well, this diet increases fat oxidation and insulin and like all these little things we talk about. Because at the end of the day, if you've ever lost weight and then regained it, why did it happen? It didn't happen because you didn't get your macronutrient ratio perfect or your nutrient timing wasn't down. It happened because you stopped being consistent with the behaviors that you implemented. That's what happened. And the same thing goes with exercise. People tell me all the time, like, man, Layne, I wish I was motivated like you. I'm like, ha! uh, I would say that I love lifting weights, and that makes it easier to be motivated. I acquired that love through years. But I don't always love it. Just like I'm not always happy with my spouse, right? Like some days we fight. Doesn't mean I don't love her overall. It just means some days we get annoyed at each other. Some days I'm unhappy with weightlifting. I don't want to do it. However, I always tell people, and I'm not saying you can never take a day off, of course. If you need a day off to reset, whatever, that's fine. You just got to be careful that that doesn't turn into weeks and months and years, right? And here's the comparison I use. I don't have to be motivated to go into train. It's part of what I do. Just like I don't have to be motivated and pump myself up to brush my teeth. Do you know why? Because it's a very simple equation. If I don't brush my teeth, they're going to go to crap. Just like if I don't exercise, my body's going to go to crap. So it is not, for me, it is not a question of motivation. It is a question of what do I want and what are the actions that are required to get what I want. And if my actions do not line up with what is needed and the amount of work that is needed, it's very simple. I'm not going to get what I want. And it's on a fundamental level, it's that simple. But getting people to, one, buy in, and two, get past the stage where you start and you've got that honeymoon phase and everything feels good. You're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then you hit your first challenge or your first setback, or your scale fluctuates. Actually, during the systematic review, participants talked about how seeing the scale fluctuate was a difficult thing to get over. And some people would quit because they would gain 3 pounds when in reality they probably just had a bad weigh-in day. This is why I actually tell people weigh in every single day and take the average, because the average is not going to fluctuate that much. So anyways.
No, I think those are great points. Yeah.
The point of this all is that consistency is the fundamental. You could have any diet. You could have any training system. If you're consistent, you're going to see results. I use this comparison, and I'll throw it back to you on this one. If I said to you, Peter, I want you to go out and become the best three-point shooter you possibly can be. You cannot get any instruction. You can't read any books. You can't get a coach, nothing. But if all you did every single day for 3 hours a day for 10 years was go out and shoot three-pointers, you probably wouldn't be in the NBA, but I bet you'd be pretty damn good at shooting three-pointers. You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. Hopefully better than I am now. Because right now, I'm not joking, my 12-year-old daughter is probably the same as me at shooting three-pointers, which means by the time she's 13, she might be better than me.
Well, I think that's the other thing for people to keep in mind is use other people's stories for inspiration, but be very careful about comparing yourself. Because what you need to ask yourself is, can I get better? Try not to ask yourself, can I be like X person? Because the answer might be no. But here's the rub. You'll never know unless you put in the decade worth of work, right? Like when I started out, I had people tell me, why are you lifting weights? You're skinny. You'll never be jacked. And then even when I got into powerlifting, people were like, look at how long your legs are. Look at how you squat. You will never be good at this. If I would have listened to that, I never would have set a gold medal in the squat. I never would have done that. Now, that world record got broken, and I may never get it back. Very good chance I'll never get it back. But I got a lot farther than I ever could have imagined just through sheer consistency. I did a lot of stuff wrong, but sheer mass effect of work and consistency can make up for a lot of shortcomings. And I think a lot of people out there have paralysis by analysis, and they never just start because they're so intimidated by all the information that's out there.